As someone who's been in the fitness industry now for almost 6 years, one of the most common mistakes I see a lot of women make when it comes to trying to lose fat and build muscle is chasing after every single diet under the sun. You're probably going to want to argue, well, it worked in the beginning, and I'm sure it did, but let's be honest about one thing. If it was meant to work long term, you would not be watching this video right now, and you would not be frustrated as to why you continue to gain everything back. And that's just literally why all diets are considered BS, because yes, you might see progress in the beginning, you might see some desired look at some point, but then you end up falling back into the rabbit hole of old habits and you just find yourself constantly starting over, wondering why you just can't stick to a routine. And what is never taught is how to maintain once you hit your goal weight or desired look. You're only ever really shown how to lose weight or how to gain weight. And a lot of times when you put in a lot of work and you finally do lose the weight, or you are finally looking good for whatever event that it was that you were preparing for, you find yourself reverting back. So before I get into the strategies and the frameworks, let's first understand the actual science between losing fat. So losing fat is just known as being in a caloric deficit, where you are eating less calories than you burn. Now, the calories that you burn are based on four things. One is your BMR. This is your basal metabolic rate, aka just the energy it takes to keep your body alive and functioning. So when you're sleeping, when you're resting, this is just everything that is working in your body. The next thing is exercise activity. These are the calories that you burn while exercising, whether it's walking, resistance training, whatever it is. And then there's non-exercise, known as NEAT. These are activities that just aren't really related to working out, but they still require energy for your body. So this could look like laundry, this could look like cleaning, this could be taking a shower. It's body movements that aren't necessarily exercise but still require energy. And then lastly is the calories that you eat while digesting food. Yes, it takes energy to digest food. So let's say with all these four things that your body is burning, let's say it takes 2,000 calories for your body to be able to do this. So let's say the food you ate was actually 2,500 calories. This actually puts you in a surplus. But let's say you ate 1,500 calories. This puts you 500 calories into your deficit. If you were to sustain that 500 calorie deficit for over a period of time, you would lose fat. You could even lose up to 1 or 2 pounds per week. And as you lose this fat, the number of calories you burn end up decreasing, meaning that your body has now adapted to these calories. So as you're burning off this fat, you burn less calories, all the various energy expenditures that you do. And your body is learning how to become more efficient with these calories. Another way you can think about it is losing weight or losing fat is like a form of losing energy. Sometimes if your body feels like you're doing this way too fast, your body will adapt to that, so it prevents you from losing so much energy. It's going to adapt no matter what, and no matter how less you eat. So the idea is that as you decrease the calories you're also decreasing the calories you burn throughout your whole body. So when this happens, the idea is that you can continue to lower your calories if it's not already too much of a low amount. And by low amount, I mean 500 under your maintenance. So if you're no longer able to lower your calories, you're just gonna have to accept that this process is gonna take a while. For fat loss to actually work, you need to be doing three things. You need to be in a caloric deficit. You need to be doing some form of resistance training. And the last thing is prioritizing protein so you can maintain as much muscle as possible. A good rule of thumb that I always tell my clients is that you want to be eating 0.7 to 1 gram of your body weight in protein. There's a reason for this range, because for someone like me who is 150 pounds, yes, it would be really easy for me to consume 150. But if you're someone who's, let's say, 200 pounds, it's really, really not sustainable to be trying to eat 200 grams of protein. But if you can stick to the range of eating 0.7 of being 200 pounds, that really means that you only need 140 grams of protein for the day, and that's a lot more doable. So those are the basics of the science of actually how to lose fat. Now, at this point, this is where if you no longer can lower your calories, this is where people try to resort to really unsustainable measures, and those are the fad diet. This is obviously the biggest mistake you're gonna make because your body has already adapted to these lower calories. Lowering it anymore will not actually make it fast, because the less you try to eat, you're not just losing weight at this point, you're now losing muscle mass, which is what you don't want to be doing if you're trying to also look lean. This also can get so obsessive to the point that you find yourself avoiding any social events, you stop eating out, you stop eating all the foods you enjoy because of this obsessive thought that you need to be eating a certain low amount of calories that is just not sustainable. And while I know this process is going to take a while, the idea idea is that you're not supposed to be sacrificing your entire life. The skill to learn in this is you want to be able to balance having your body goals with your life. When you do the opposite of trying to do sustainable things, you end up spiraling out of control. You have uncontrollable cravings. It may even lead to some EDs, and you're just constantly thinking about food, and the whole process becomes a lot more miserable than it has to be. Okay, so what do you do? So the strategy that I do, and I even have my clients do, is that you don't jump into a 500 calorie deficit right away. If you are used to eating 2,000 calories and you make your body try to adapt to just 1,500, you're gonna find that you're gonna be really hungry. The best way is to start out in your maintenance for a little bit, which is the 2,000 calories, and then cut your calories slowly week by week. Because believe it or not, if you were eating 1,900 calories, you are still in a deficit. It's a smaller deficit, but it's going to be a lot easier to adapt to eating 1,900 calories versus the 1,500. This approach is going to make you feel like you're not as hungry because you're making the changes very slowly. So realistically, when you're aiming to lose 0.5 to 1 pound of fat per week, this means that if you want to lose 20 pounds, you can stay in this sustainable deficit for 10 to 20 weeks. And truthfully, this is just what I enjoy. I aim to lose half a pound a week because then I don't actually feel like my calories are being cut, and it doesn't feel so restrictive. Because like I said, even if you're just eating 1,900, it's still a deficit for you. And then week by week, you can then take it to 1,800 and then 1,700, 1,600. For 2 weeks at a time, you can stay at these stages before really lowering it a whole 500 calories. Not only does this give you a little bit more freedom in the foods you can eat, but you can enjoy date nights, you can enjoy eating out, you can enjoy celebrations. You probably will see some spikes here and there, but that's okay. Because when it comes to your weight, there could be so many things that interfere with it, whether it's muscle soreness, because that's just your body holding on to water. It could be the days leading up to your period. It could be you on your period. Like, those are all natural things that are going to happen. When I was going through my deficit in 2023, the two spikes that you see, one, it was on vacation, and then the second one, it was I had this really weird stomach bug. I don't know what was happening. Clearly, counting calories was not going to help me at this point because I just needed to eat foods that were going to sit well in my stomach. And it was just kind of hell week. In those types of cases, it gives you the freedom to take a break if you ever need to. Life happens and you just got to get back on it once you can. The process keeps you calm and relaxed. So even when you do end up hitting your goal weight after 10 to 20 weeks, it won't even feel like you were on a diet. The extra time to get there, I personally think is worth it, because if you do it slow and sustainable, you're less likely to revert to the old habits that keep bringing you to start over all the time. You're probably at the point of like, okay, that's the hypothetical maintenance. So here's actually how to calculate your own maintenance. And there are two ways. The first way is super easy, and if you just want the quick one, multiply your body weight anywhere between 14 to 18. And 18 is if you're somebody who's like athlete level where you are training 2 times a day. And then 14 is if you're more on the sedentary side, where if you just sit all day, you don't even go on walks, that would be more of your number. But if you're someone like me who lifts 3 to 4 times a week and gets at least 8,000 steps every single day, you could probably aim that your number would probably be 15 or 16. When I do mine, I like to just keep it on the lower side, because worst case, if it's not happening, I can always just increase it the next week. The second way is going to require a little bit more time, but it will be a lot more accurate. How it's going to go is for 2 weeks, you're going to track everything you eat as normal. Don't make any changes. And every morning before you eat, before you drink any water, after you use the bathroom, you're going to weigh yourself every single day for those 2 weeks, and you're going to take the weekly average of your weight. And if in between those 2 weeks you didn't see any changes in your weight, you are eating in maintenance. If you saw that your weight has decreased by half a pound or more, it means that you're in a deficit. If your weight has increased by 0.5 or more, it means that you're eating in a surplus. So then you want to tweak your calories that you're eating to match whatever those results are. Now, if you're somebody who just doesn't like to track, could you do this by intuitive eating? Yes, but I truly feel like intuitive eating is going to be hard if you already don't know how much you're eating. It's really easy to look at a bowl or an entree of something and think, oh, that looks like a cup of rice, but it ends up being like 3 cups that you just ate because you're not aware of the serving sizes. Okay, so moving into strategy 2, and this is building sustainable habits. This is that thing where people are like, oh, don't rely on motivation, you need discipline. And it's like, yes, you need discipline, but in order to get discipline, there's like the little baby steps you got to take to get there. So you have like this perfect like little loop. And if you read Atomic Habits by James Clear, it actually goes into a lot of detail of why these sustainable habits matter a lot before you just jump into just thinking that you're lazy POS because you don't have discipline. Because when you actually do something and you stick with it, the results come, which comes to the motivation, which then leads to the discipline. The sustainable habits are the things that make you do things without having to think. So let's say, for example, brushing your teeth. It is just something on autopilot. You don't think about it. You don't moan and whine about it. You just do it. And the only time that I know y'all are motivated to go and brush your teeth is an hour before your dentist appointment, so you don't get any lectures about cavities, or when they ask you if you floss, you can say, yes, I do because I just did it this morning. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. So there's two ways that you can start incorporating sustainable habits. And this is exactly what I do for my clients. The first way is what I call active enjoyment. This is where you incorporate something that you need to do with something you enjoy doing. So for me personally, I love watching shows. I just finished Good Girls and I was hooked on that show. And while I could just sit on my couch watching it, I found it a lot more beneficial that in order for me to get my steps in for the day, I would watch the show while walking on the treadmill. Or sometimes in general, if it's just really hot outside, or in the winter because it gets dark at like 4 p.m. and it's not so safe for us women to be walking out. Unless you live in a really safe neighborhood, kudos to you. But then at least you can have like a walking pad or a treadmill and you can just take your phone and you can just put on a show that you enjoy so you can still hit your step goal. Or if you don't like watching shows, of course you can always listen to a podcast. You could be watching this YouTube video while you walk on this treadmill. When you pair an activity you enjoy doing with something you know you have to do, you're less likely to skip out on. And if I'm being honest, I've even seen on social media people who love to play video games, they will play while walking on the treadmill or doing their elliptical. And then of course you've even seen people who started working from home more often thanks to COVID, so then they got walking pads. Another example is, let's say meal prepping is just the most tedious thing that you could do. You find no joy in doing it. What helps me is I'll save my favorite show or a new episode or my favorite podcast, and I save it for those days that I know I have to meal prep, but that way I can play it in the background, that I'm so into what I'm listening to that what I'm doing with my hands just kind of come naturally. And meal prepping no longer feels like this task that I have to check mark off my list. Or my favorite thing to do is a little bit more on the spending side, but grocery shopping is that I do love doing, just because I've been in that position where I was so tight on money that spending money on groceries almost felt like a luxury, and now I get to buy whatever I want without having to worry too much about what I'm buying. But as someone who, let's say, doesn't like to grocery shop, you can pair it with something of like a sweet treat to incentivize you. So for me, this used to look like buying iced coffee before I would get groceries. I would either get iced coffee and then go on a walk before I got groceries, or I would just bring it with me to get groceries. So now the second way to help you build these sustainable habits is that you want your environment to match your goal. So something that's really helped me is I am somebody who can eat an entire bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Will I regret it after? Of course. Does that make a difference when I have a bag sitting in front of me? No, it doesn't. So what helps me is I just make sure I never bring these items home, because I know when I'm home and I'm stressed out or I just feel like munching on something, I know that's going to be the first thing I'm going to grab. And let's be real, yes, you can measure it out and have a serving, but I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not going to do that. I want the whole bag. So because I know that that's a weakness for me, I'm not going to bring that home. And some other coaches out there are going to argue that you shouldn't be telling people to do this because then it just reinforces the idea that they don't have discipline. And the thing is I know most of you have the discipline, but why tempt yourself to do it? It is human nature to want to munch and eat the foods that you enjoy. It is also human nature that you go into the kitchen when you're bored, when you're not even hungry, and you open the fridge 3 times thinking something has changed in the last 2 times that you've already opened it. The last thing you need is to have all these high-calorie foods just tempt you. And if you're someone who was like me when I was working my 9 to 5, who would come home stressed out, I would always find myself binge eating at night because eating food is what brought me joy to a stressful day. Or sometimes I would just be so busy at work that I skip lunch, so I come home just absolutely starving. So sustainable habits to prevent you from doing that is setting up hobbies or activities that are going to keep you occupied. So for me, a lot of the times it would look like reading a book. It would be making like a nice hot drink, so that way since my mind will be occupied, that I'm already digesting something, even though it's just a hot drink, I'm less likely to binge. It could just be calling up a friend you haven't talked to in a while. This could be your time to reconnect with a family member. You basically want to do these activities that prevent you from walking into the kitchen until you actually need to if you're hungry. And if you absolutely need something for those type of occasions, like you just can't help but need to munch on something, you can find healthier alternatives to kind of replace that. This is something that I did. I don't know if it would resonate with a lot of you, but because I loved eating Flamin' Hot Cheetos, I liked the crunchy taste. So what I would do is I would just have a whole buttload of carrots in my fridge. They are super low calorie. They are pretty high in fiber if you eat enough, so you're gonna get full and kind of tired of eating at some point. It's also hard and crunchy, so it makes my jaw tired. So then that way I'm less likely to actually eat food because I'm already exhausted from eating these carrots. Same thing with like cucumbers and bell peppers. They're just something you can munch on. So it replaces the crunchiness of eating chips. A good way to think about these sustainable habits is what are the things that are going to help you set you up for success for the next day. Another example could be if you struggle to get up in the morning to go work out before your 9 to 5, or you just have this tendency to scroll on your phone before even getting up, and next thing you know, a half an hour has passed and you're like, well, I can't work out anymore. What you can do is you can get either an old style alarm clock, so it kind of just forces you to use something that's not your phone to touch right away, or you can put your phone across the room, so when it does go off, you have to get up in order to turn it off, and then maybe even keep like a glass of water right there so you can chug it right away. I find that when I chug cold water right away in the morning, my senses are up. We are awake. We're not going back to sleep no matter how hard I try. The last strategy is make sure you have a plan after your fat loss goal. I think a common thing I see among people who get out of a deficit is that they just think, oh, I can finally pig out on pizza and all my favorite foods. But the thing is if you already couldn't eat your favorite foods, you shouldn't have this sensation of being restricted that you need to just pig out on all these foods. The best way, in my opinion, is this may actually contradict some other coaches I have found, but just eat in your maintenance calories. This kind of allows you to just relax on the track. A lot of other coaches, like I said, would disagree, and they would say to reverse into your maintenance calories, meaning you build up your calories again. But see, I see no point in doing that because you're still putting your body in a deficit, even though you're reversing your calories up. And at the end of the day, your body doesn't need to adapt to higher calories, it needs to adapt to lower calories. Not even your body, it's kind of more your mind so you don't feel hungry. So if you eat more calories, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you don't need to prep your body to do that. Because you have to keep in mind that a caloric deficit is not a long-term solution. It is meant to be a very short-term phase. Because the longer you stay in a deficit, even after the 20-week, your biofeedback is going to tell you at some point that it is done. You're going to feel either constantly tired, you're going to have a very low libido, you're going to just feel like your body is always aching and that you're always sore. Like, you will absolutely feel miserable. So when you come back into maintenance, you're able to eat in a range. So if you want to work your calories back up, you can think of working your calories back up when you're in maintenance, because your new calories change every time you lose the weight. So remember how we started with the 2,000 calories as your maintenance. Let's say now your new maintenance calories is 2,200. So the range to eat is anything between 2,200 to 2,600. I prefer this method, and it's a method that I do with my clients because you're able to eat more food without feeling restricted. And by doing this method, you're able to have better workouts in the gym because now you have more energy to push and lift heavier. You're able to build more muscle a lot easier. And the idea is that you're trying to maintain this new weight that you've reached at least 1 to 2 pounds. And then this is where I love spending time in maintenance, because now you can enjoy your favorite foods again in full flexibility. You have more time to build more muscle, and the cycle continues. And when you're ready after being in maintenance after a couple weeks, you can kind of decide, do I want to go into a surplus to build more muscle, or do I want to continue going into my cut to go to the desired weight goal if you have a lot of weight to lose. So I hope this video helped, and if it did, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.